I'm Christopher Gall.
And I'm Jessica Andrea.
With NewsWrap, a summary of some of the news in or affecting LGBTQ communities around the world for the week ending June 22nd, 2019. Kenya's government has returned dozens of LGBTQ refugees to the anti-queer internment camp from which they had fled. According to multiple reports, armed police officers rousted 76 refugees from safe houses in the capital city of Nairobi on the evening of June 19th. LGBTQ people and several children were among the refugees who were put on buses back to the camp in Kakuma. The government claims that refugees should be living in camps, and if they reside outside of camps, it should be with appropriate documentation. That, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. The agency had helped move the refugees out of the Kakuma camp, where many had suffered violent anti-queer attacks by other refugees. Tens of thousands are housed in the sprawling camp in the northwestern part of Kenya, many from other countries in the region with homophobic societies. A small group of queer refugees held a pride gathering in the camp last year that ignited a wave of violent assaults. Camp officials told the LGBTQ people in December that they could no longer protect them. Many relocated refugees experienced anti-queer threats or violence in Nairobi and were forced to flee to other safe houses in the city before this week's roundup. One widely quoted refugee fleeing anti-queer violence in his native Burundi used the pseudonym Frank. The BBC noted scars on Frank's face that he said came from vicious attacks in the camp. He said, "Wherever we have lived, we face homophobia because of our orientation. We don't know where to flee to." The UN Refugee Agency has promised to protect the LGBTQ people who have been forced back into the Kakuma camp. Applying for asylum and permission to resettle is an arduous process that can take more than a year. Interviews are reportedly only scheduled every 6 months. Kenya's High Court upheld the criminalization of consensual adult gay sex in late May. Convictions can bring up to 14 years in prison. World Refugee Day was observed on June 20th.
The Prime Minister of Malaysia told an audience at the UK's Cambridge Union on June 16th that he didn't understand gay marriage. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad said in response to a question after a speech, "Marriage is about producing children. I think rights have limits. There's no such thing as an absolute right to do everything." Mahathir has been in power off and on in Malaysia since 1981. He retired in 2003, but was returned to office in 2017. He has repeatedly called LGBTQ rights a Western value. Pink News reported that Mahathir also drew the ire of Jewish groups for anti-Semitic remarks during his speech. Mahathir leads a Southeast Asian Muslim-majority country that is becoming increasingly more repressive in its treatment of LGBTQ people. Inflammatory rhetoric from several government officials and high-profile religious leaders has fueled the fire. Violent police raids of known gay establishments are becoming more frequent, and there have been public canings for violations of Islamic law for expressions of consensual adult same-gender affection. Longtime Mahathir political rival Anwar Ibrahim was jailed from 1999 until 2004 on allegedly trumped-up charges of having sex with one of his male staff members. It's widely believed that Anwar will eventually replace the 94-year-old Mahathir as prime minister. According to Gaystar News, Anwar said in a speech last month that Malaysia must never bow down to Western pressure on LGBTQ rights.
U.S. President Donald Trump now has a certifiable homophobe to lead a little-known federal commission on religious liberty. Family Research Council President Tony Perkins has been elected to chair the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Perkins' Family Research Council has been identified by the Southern Poverty Law Center as an anti-queer hate group. Its agenda includes support for the debunked conversion therapy that promises to make queer people straight. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom was established in 1998 as part of the International Religious Freedom Act. Its purpose is to use international standards to monitor religious freedom violations globally and to make policy recommendations to the President, the Secretary of State, and Congress. Members of the Commission are appointed by the President and congressional leaders from both parties. Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell nominated Perkins to the commission, and its members voted him chair. During his long tenure with the Family Research Council, Perkins condemned the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell and claimed that the U.S. Supreme Court's marriage equality ruling would lead to the teaching of immoral sexuality in public schools. Perkins lines up with conservative Christians who strongly oppose a woman's right to choose. He has also made inflammatory anti-Muslim comments that lead some to question just which religions he wants to defend.
Nick Fish of American Atheists noted that Tony Perkins cares about two things: cementing Christian supremacy across the globe and protecting the ability of religious fundamentalists to weaponize their religion against atheists, LGBTQ people, women, and religious minorities. The Human Rights Campaign's David Stacey charged that, once again, the Trump-Pence administration has taken a nonpartisan commitment to religious freedom around the world and turned it into another weapon in their anti-LGBTQ crusade. Democrats in the U.S. House have introduced the Do No Harm Act to protect all minorities, including religious minorities, while also upholding anti-discrimination laws. Even if the symbolic effort passed in the House, it would likely not get the blessing of the Republican-controlled Senate, let alone signed into law by the president. Meanwhile, Puerto Rico Governor Ricardo Rossello has retreated from his support for a religious liberty bill. NBC News reported that Rossello told lawmakers to shelve the bill within hours of a critical letter in the local press by global entertainment icon and gay married dad Ricky Martin. Rossello said the bill provokes the division of our people. The measure would have allowed government workers to refuse to serve someone if they felt that doing so would violate their religious beliefs.
The well-known Gallup poll has published the third in a weekly June Pride Month series examining U.S. views on LGBTQ rights. This week's findings show a clear majority in favor of qualified transgender people serving in the U.S. military. However, opinions were mixed on gender-related bathroom policies. The poll was conducted in mid-May. Gallup notes that, as President Donald Trump's ban on most transgender military service members continues to face legal challenges, 71% of Americans support allowing openly transgender men and women to serve in the military. The survey results come on the heels of a U.S. House vote to deny funding that would be used in any way to implement the Trump trans ban. But as with other pro-queer measures, Republican Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is not likely to allow a vote on the measure from the Democratic Party-controlled House. Trump continues to falsely cite exorbitant medical costs for transgender enlistees as the main reason for the ban, but numerous reports have noted that the Pentagon spends more on Viagra than it does on transgender-related healthcare costs. As would be expected, women were more likely than men to support trans military service, Democrats were more likely than independents or Republicans, and younger people were more likely than older respondents. However, slightly more than half of those surveyed said that people should use gender-specific public restrooms that correspond with their birth gender. 44% supported trans people using the facility that corresponds with their gender identity. The Gallup press release noted that opinions on that issue have remained generally static since the company first asked about it in 2016.
And finally, one of the writers, producers, and directors of the smash TV hit Pose has made industry history, announcing her first-of-its-kind deal for a trans woman of color with a major content distributor. Janet Mock said in a video tweet that there's potential now with Netflix's worldwide audience to introduce hundreds of millions of viewers to trans people. Mock said that there are a few hush-hush projects that I can't really talk about, but she revealed that one of them is a half-hour drama series and another features a trans woman in college. There's also series set in New Orleans soon after slavery was abolished and a reboot of a classic sitcom. The showbiz publication Variety reported that the 3-year contract gives Netflix the exclusive rights to television projects from Mock, along with the first look option on feature films. Netflix Vice President of Original Content, Cindy Holland, called Mock a groundbreaker and creative force who we think will fit right in here at Netflix. TV hitmaker Ryan Murphy is proud of his mentee. Murphy said, "Janet is a cultural force, and the world needs to hear her stories." Mock has also written 2 best-selling memoirs. She tweeted that her 3-year multi-million-dollar agreement with Netflix is so bonkers.
That's NewsWrap, global queer news with attitude for the week ending June 22nd, 2019. Follow the news in your area and around the world. An informed community is a strong community.
NewsWrap is written by Greg Gordon, edited by Lucia Chappelle, produced by Brian DeShazor, recorded at the studios of KPFK Los Angeles, and brought to you by you.
Help keep us in ears around the world at thiswayout.org, where you can also read the text of this newscast, and much more.
And you can listen to NewsWrap each week by subscribing to our This Way Out Radio YouTube channel. For This Way Out, I'm Jessica Andrea.
And I'm Christopher Gall.